Hi, I'm Rob. I have Brick and Mouth syndrome, and I'm bringing back an old faithful here. If you're new, if you haven't seen any of this before, this is the imaginary festival lineups of Reddit, where I used to, at least, browse the Reddit boards for Download Festival and sort of steal content that people have made and thank them on the board. It's a bit of a staple for the Download Festival Reddit for people to put up their own imaginary or ideal lineups for a festival, and I think that some of them come up with some utter brilliant things. Now, I've got a whole bunch of them collected from years back now, where I just stopped filming it because reasons. So what I do is I go lower stages to the main stage, run through the lineup, lowest on the card, headliner of the stage, and give my sort of opinion and take on if it feels like a Download Festival. So without further ado, let's get into it. Starting on the Friday, on the Dogtooth stage, we have the King Blues, headlined by Alien Weaponry. That feels like a Dogtooth stage. Alien Weaponry headlining it, that is perfect. Can't say much more about it, because that's all I'm running off of. So let's move up to the next stage. Sick Puppies into Bad Flower, then headlined by, this is quite interesting, because this was written up 2, maybe 3 years ago, Busted. At the time, a lot of people were taking the piss out of this idea, but I think more people have now come round to the idea that Busted maybe could actually headline the Avalanche stage. Oh look, it's happening this year. Funny that. This has got classic Avalanche stage written all over it, and this person, they predicted a headliner for this stage years in advance. So mad props to them. I wish I saved everyone's username years ago, really sorry I didn't. But this feels exactly like an Avalanche because, well, it kind of is. Well done, that's pretty dope. I will not be calling the next 2 stages the Apex or the Opus because I refuse that name. No one voted for that name. That is not what people gave as options. Sod off. So on the second stage, the Encore stage, starting up, we have Fever 333 into Ginger. Then our 2 logoed acts for that stage are Arch Enemy, headlined by Sabaton. This feels like a perfect alternative to a main stage feel for Download. Sabaton and Arch Enemy do feel a bit more like they are Bloodstock Festival bands, which is possibly why this feels ideal to be on the second stage. Slightly heavier, something different, but in Download's recent history, there is no clashes with their main stage headliner. This is perfect. So let's go have a look over at that main stage. Now again, I would like to preface that this was written years ago, and somehow they've done a very good job of predicting these. So let's start it off. Escape the Fate, into Beartooth, into Papa Roach. Then our 3 logoed acts for this stage. We have Don Broco into Royal Blood, headlined by the one, the only, the never gonna happen sadly, Rage Against the Machine. I'd love for this to happen. I'd love for Rage to be playing together again. But as recently we found out, they're never gonna get back together. Full on Taylor Swift mode. Never ever ever. Which sucks. This would be a very good main stage for the opening day of the festival. Don Broco have got a lot of younger crowd pull, which would be brilliant to get them in. Royal Blood did their, I believe it was them, did their comedy set at, I think it was Glastonbury the other year, where they were kind of dicks on purpose, and it got them a lot of publicity. A lot of people were against them, and Rage Against the Machine is a great way to start that festival off with a headliner. High energy, upbeat, and if you're going for how a lot of the people feel now, very, I hate to quote Youngblood, anti-corporate, anti-establishment and anti-authoritarian, this would be the perfect way to get people pumped for the rest of the festival. Friday, fucking awesome. I'd be well up for this one. So let's move down, back to the Dogtooth for day 2. Kicking off, we have As Lions, headlined by Helloween. Perfect setup for that day 2 on that Dogtooth stage. A heavy band like Helloween, bringing theatricality into it. That is ideal. Really cool shit. Again, hard to say much more than that because I'm only running off of 2 bands here, but it's very cool. Really like what they've done here. Up onto the Avalanche stage, we have Alpha Wolf into Andy Black into I wish I had a clue what that said. I have no idea. I'm not going to be reverse image searching. I might be fine, might not be, who knows. It's imaginary. Let's move on. Onto that second stage, we have Delane into All That Remains, and our logoed acts for that stage are Pierce the Veil and Bullet for My Valentine. Pierce the Veil bring in sort of under my generation sort of emo loves and one of the two tribes that people had to choose. That's kind of an interesting way to go with it, but I suppose going into Bullet makes sense. After what they did at Pilot, makes total sense. They should at least be near that point now, or they should be given that stage to really shine and show more people that they can still go, even if they ball the shit out. Onto that main stage for Saturday. Starting out, we have Monster Truck into Dragon Force, into the legendary Billy Idol. And genuinely, that's not a bad legend spot to be in. I quite like what they've done with that positioning for him, because it keeps people that would want to see him able to before the mad rush of people will come in for these last few acts. And our three logoed acts are Hailstorm into Alter Bridge, headlined by Bon Jovi. That is such a weird top three for that day. I don't really know where to place it or what to think about it. Hailstorm and Alter Bridge, possibly higher than I think they'd go, and Bon Jovi, I don't know if they fit as a Legends headliner anymore, because a lot of people would consider Rage Against the Machine to be the Legends headliner, especially with the way the download's progressing now. But again, this was made a few years back. It would have made sense at the time. It's not a bad lineup, but it's not a great lineup. It's certainly not something that I would buy a day ticket for. Which kind of sucks, but there's always day 3 to save it and bring it back as a cohesive festival at the end. So let's have a look at it. Down onto that Dogtooth for the third and final day of this person's dream lineup. The Agonist, headlined by Suicidal Tendencies. Genuinely, not a bad Dogtooth stage again. I think this person does very well at putting together a short list for the top end of the Dogtooth stage, and I really like what they've done with it. But there's a lot more to go for this day, so let's carry on up to the Avalanche stage. Zebrahead into the Interrupters, headlined by the Dropkick Murphys. That is a solid Avalanche stage, bringing in a lot of punk influences, which I think has been lacking on some of the previous days, but ultimately is bringing more cohesion to the festival. But I think they've done some very interesting themed days now because of this, or at least themed stages on days. So let's go up to the next stage, onto the second stage, to see if I am right. Nothing More into Breaking Benjamin, and our two logoed acts for this stage are Pale Waves into Pendulum. Don't think they've done theming for stages after all now, but it's a very interesting take on it. It does again keep that alternative to the main stage with Pale Waves, who I think should have been there by now, and Pendulum headlining. Pendulum were amazing on the main stage the other year. I think given the opportunity to headline the second, they would do brilliantly well with them. They had such a good reception. I think this would work really well, but I'm just not convinced that the lineup would work too well, as Pale Waves sort of bring the 1975 crowd, and Pendulum again have a Reading and Leeds sort of vibe to them, but they're very cross-genre. Nearly said gender there. They might be, I don't know. I'm old, it's hard for me to know these things. As an alternative to main, this works, so let's go have a look at that main stage. So up on that main stage we have Imminence into In Flames into, because they've got to be on every download lineup, Skindred, and our three headline acts we have Tenacious D into Judas Priest, headlined by the one, the only, how have they never played at this festival before, the Foo Fighters. Having Tenacious D Jack Black and the Foo Fighters there would make for some very interesting possible crossovers for songs that could be done. I just feel that Judas Priest being in between them, when I saw them at Bloodstock, they were fucking boring. So I don't think having the crowd go from ha-ha, fun, and especially with all the covers that Tenacious D and Jack Black especially have been doing recently, I don't think the boredom and the lull in between would be very well received. I think a lot of people would leave rapidly. They're just not very interesting, especially for a download crowd. While they respect the older bands and the heritage and the history of them, someone like Judas Priest, they don't really do a stage show. It is about the ability and the skill of the performers, which is great. But I think for a final day you need some theatricality and some energy behind what's going on. Which leads into this headliner being the best one they could have as the final day headliner. Foo Fighters would be brilliant. Everyone has said for a long time now that Foo Fighters need to headline Download, and the fact that they have not feels criminal. Overall, if all I could afford was a day ticket, this would be the day that I'd go for. And it makes sense. I love Pale Waves. Foo Fighters would be fun. Looking at the other days, what's on there already, they wouldn't draw me in enough. But this would be the one I'd go for. So overall, does this feel like a Download Festival event? Yeah, it really does. The person who put this together predicted one of the Avalanche stage headliners for this year years ago. That makes total sense. You've got bands on there that people want back. We want Rage Against the Machine back. We want them to reform and stop hating each other. We want Foo Fighters to headline. Bon Jovi would be a hilarious one to have between those 2 days. But would this be an instant buy for me? Well, I'm an idiot. I buy my tickets in the early bird when they're released on leaving day for the festival. So I'd probably have the ticket already, but would I be super excited for it? Not overly. Day 1 and day 3 would be great. I would see day 2 as more of my relaxation day. I wouldn't be super hyped about this, but I wouldn't expect many of my friends to want to come with me for this year. While a very good attempt, and while this does still feel like a Download lineup, it feels like Download of years back, probably when this person put it all together. So I'm not too excited. I like the way that Download is progressing forward, and I think next time I'm going to grab something that feels more like a modern look at Download Festival. So if I didn't have a ticket when this was announced, this wouldn't be an instant buy for me, which is kind of shitty. But it would be something I would be very interested to see where the bands progress next, what else is added to that lineup. And I wish I could go back and ask the people that put these together, who else would you add to that lineup, given more time and more planning? Sadly, I'm lazy and I'm not going to do that. So let me know down below what you think of this lineup, if you'd go, what you'd add, if there's anything you'd change about. I don't want to get bogged down in all of that bit myself, but there are a few changes I'd make. But ultimately, if I had a ticket for this event and this was announced afterwards, I wouldn't be too upset. But I could see how other people would give this lineup the same reaction that this year's lineup has. Very mixed, very mixed. But ultimately it's a good event. And I'll try and see you guys next week. Hopefully I'm not going to burn myself out doing stuff. And hopefully with something different and interesting and varied for you to watch. So until then, see ya.